Welcome back, everybody, to Girl Boss SA. My name is Zanemvula, and we're finally about to get into the video that we've all been waiting for. It is the African creation story. Finally, after so many videos of promising to get into it, I'm finally gonna get into it. Africans have played a major role in the global understanding of the concept of creation. In the academic study of African creation, there are very clear distinctions made between the science of creation and the spiritual interpretation of creation. And these stories are often told through myths to make them easier to understand and pass down through the generations. This is where the concept of mythology actually comes from. In general, Africans believe that the universe was brought into existence by the actions of one single god, or several gods on behalf of one supreme god, a supreme being. It's always rooted in one source, which is ultimately the source of all of nature. The idea of creation within the African context is really important to understand when trying to understand the relationship that we have with God and the relationship that we have with each other. And in order to simplify the science of creation, creation events are often told through narratives, through epic tales. The common components or the main theme within all African creation stories are the existence of one God, intermediate divinities who serve God, such as the ancestors, other gods, other deities and divinities, ancestral spirits who interact with man, and also natural elements, natural elemental spirits, such as the plant spirits, the water spirits. Because in Africa we have different cultures, different ethnicities, and spiritual diversity, our creation narratives echo these differences. The study of pre-colonial customs and beliefs always identify commonalities within all of our African cultures, ultimately making us one people with one spiritual understanding concerning God, spirituality, and creation. Oh my God. So we're going to look at the understanding of African creation outside of the Islamic and Christian influence, before it was tampered with, when it was still in its purest form. I'm going to touch on several cultural narratives, but I'm going to start, it's quite thundery. There's quite an intense storm outside, so hopefully you can hear me over the storm. I'm going to start with the Ancient Kemetic creation narrative because that's the oldest recorded narrative of the African creation story that we have in the history of the world. They have a lot of it transcribed in their temples and tombs for us to still refer back to this day. In Egyptian cosmology, the forces of creation are mirrored in nature, and creation is an ongoing cycle that expresses itself through all forms of nature, be it plants, animals, human beings, and all of the divinities that facilitate the cycle. The whole point of understanding this is so that we understand the cycle of everything. Understanding the circle of life connects us to the source of life, because the circle of life involves our inevitable return to that source, as well as our re-emergence in the physical realm. So our Kemetic ancestors, they called the source Nehe, which is forever, it's eternity. The Nehe was very sacred, and this is why burial rites were also so elaborate and precise and extensive. The burial rites are as sacred as the source itself because they're about giving the souls safe passage back to the source, helping them to return to source without hindrance, and making sure that if they are now to return, that they can do that without unnecessary difficulty. So the creation cycle, according to our ancestors in Kemet, occurs in 4 stages, which they refer to as the 4 worlds of creation. These stages are expressed through the nature of the 4 elements, which I also mentioned in a previous video about communicating with African deities. The elements are obviously fire, water, earth, and air. The first element being water, which was referred to as the world of Manu. The world of Manu is the horizon of waters. Manu in Nguni we call amanzi or mandi. In Swahili it's maji. In Niger they say mane. The Burundi say amazi. Our Cometic ancestors said manu, and this is the celestial sphere from which all other elements of creation emerge. So within the world of Manu, scientifically, this is where the first stages of creation occur. It's not as simple as the biblical God said, let there be light. It touches on that on a deeper, more detailed level. There are 11 stages of creation that happen before the light emerges from the waters, before the sun emerges from the waters. And those 11 stages occur within the water itself. Noon represents existence without form or structure. She's the source of all ideas, including the ones that brought us here in our form. She's what our ancestors in Kemet referred to as the waters of the abyss, or the chaos of pre-creation. So even if you think about the nature of water and how it is without structure, the structure that water has is the containers that we put it in and the way that we mold it into different elements to create different things. And nothing can actually exist without the element of water incorporated into whatever it is that you're creating. So water is the most fundamental element, and water in itself, water independently, is without form. It is a free-flowing element. So that is what Noon represented, and that's what Noon represents. She is the beginning stage, she's the first stage of creation. In Kemet, she's depicted as a watery mass of undefined powers, where all possibilities are articulated, but not yet manifest. So the way that it's described in Ancient Kemet is that Noon, the primeval waters, brings forth life from darkness by stirring and speaking the creative utterance. Within this world of creation, within the horizon of waters, there are 11 stages that take place for the sun to emerge. So the sun emerges from the waters after this 11-stage process, which starts at the beginning with Noon, the Genesis, which is the motion that she creates. And the next 11 phases are represented by 11 gods. The phases are motion, and then matter, space, time, darkness, light, communication, structure, precession, rotation, and all of those stages are represented by different gods. The way that Noon represents the stage of motion, Jehuti represents the communication, because Jehuti is the god of communication. He is the voice of Ra. He is the deity or the divinity that communicates between the realms and allows for the divinities to communicate successfully between the realms. Order is represented by the goddess Ma'at, which I've explained in a previous video how the goddess Ma'at represents structure and order. And I've explained in that video what she's all about. She brings structure to the creation process. Within the rotation emerges Ra, the sun. That's the first element to come out of the waters, the second element within the stage of creation. Ra then transitions us into the next stage of creation, the next world of creation, which is the next element. And just as this world of creation consists of its own stages and its own gods, so does the next world. In the world of Akut, we also have 2 families of gods, but we have a total of 6 gods. And in this world of creation, the fire world of creation, the ultimate creator in this element is Ptah, who represents the fabrication stage of creation. And they called him the artificer, who creates life forms through thought. Ptah is part of the first family. The first family is referred to as the Memphis Triad. This is where the thought process of creation occurs. The actual evocation of patterns, the patterns of life, occur within the second family of this world. And the second family is referred to as the Esna Triad. Here we have the gods Khnum, Nate, and Heka. Khnum is the one that's known to have fashioned human beings out of clay before they received the breath of life. He represents embodiment. Nate represents healing, fusion. Heka represents ritual and transformation. Nate is the creatrix of this family. He's the androgynous mother, father of the gods, who infuses elemental substance with vitality, giving the elemental substances life. Khnum, who I explained represents the embodiment or the distillation, is known as the fashioner of the material forms. And his powers extend from the immaterial world of fire into the visible realms. So he facilitates the transition from the world of Akut to the world of Rostao, the earth element. Each god within each world helps the transition into the next world, because all of the elements are also interdependent. They depend on each other to survive, and they also depend on each other in order to facilitate the process of creation. So the gods also echo that in the way that they work together and the way that they help transition the worlds into each other so that they flow. One of the quotes in the temple of Khnum read that he fashioned mankind and engendered the gods. All live by that which emanates from him. His manifestations are hidden among people. They constitute all beings since the time of the gods. Best way to simplify the world of Rostao is the cooling of fire. When fire cools, when hot lava cools, it becomes rock, it becomes earth. And that's what this next world represents. It's the cooling of the heat to create a surface for the spirits to settle. That's why they call the world of Rostao the horizon of spirits. Rostao is earth. It's the genesis of material life. It's the material life that provides a surface for the world of spirits to settle. And that's us. We represent the world of spirits, the divinities, the plants, the animals. All of us that are living and breathing on earth represent the world of spirits. And within this world of creation, we have 3 families of gods. This is the world of creation that consists of the highest quantity of deities. The world of Rostao consists of 16 gods. The first god being Atum. In Rostao, the first family of gods govern the process of physical manifestation. These 9 gods are the ones that we hear about the most when we look at Egyptology, ancient Kemetic science, Kemetic mythology, divinity in ancient Egypt, because they're the ones who began all forms of physical manifestation on earth. They're the gods such as Asa, Set, Nut, all the ones that we've also mentioned before. This world ultimately starts with the first god being Atum. He is the creator of this realm. When the narrative of Atum was adopted by Greek and Roman philosophers who derived all of their knowledge from ancient Kemet, it was then translated into the scientific term atom, which is the smallest particle of a chemical element that can possibly exist. It was also translated into Christian indoctrination as Adam, the first man. So everything that then represents the first in science or in religion all goes back to the original Kemetic definition of Atum. That is the root of that knowledge. They also refer to Atum as Ra-Atum because the sun is the first element to emerge out of the waters. Atum represents the principle of unity and the function of consciousness. He represents consciousness. Atum gives birth to Shu and Tefnut, who then give birth to Nut and Geb, and it continues. The birthing of these gods then builds the consciousness on earth. These gods also represent the different elemental forces on earth. Atum first gives birth to Shu and Tefnut, who represent moisture and air. And just as in the previous world, the continuation of the element of water comes into play, as Tefnut, who represents moisture, nourishes the continuation of the creation process, and Shu, who represents air, creates space for shape and form to take place. Shu and Tefnut are depicted as brother and sister, as well as husband and wife, and they together birth Nut and Geb, who represent sky and earth. So within the earth realm, the earth god is Geb, and the sky goddess is Nut, and they are wife and husband, as well as sister and brother. Geb is the earth god on which we all reside, and then Nut and Geb give birth to what I like to call the Big Five, which is Asa, Set, Neptet, Heru, and Set. I like to call them the Big Five because they're when the characteristics of human nature were formed. But that's the tale that we're gonna get into in the next video because it's quite lengthy. So within the horizon of spirits, this is where we have the scientific stages of consciousness, breath, sensation, gestation, vegetation, germination, birth, corruption, sustenance, conception, mastery, procreation, and these are all represented by their respective gods. The best way to internalize this information is to get the sacred magic of ancient Egypt. It's like a textbook that helps you understand the intricacy of the creation process with all 42 of its gods and all 42 stages of the creation process. And lastly, we have the world of air, the element air, the world of Ament. It's referred to as the horizon of the west. This element now makes room for the world that we experience. In the world of Ament, we have 3 families and a total of 9 gods. The ultimate creator in this world is Amun, who is the origin of the term Amen. Amen comes from Amun. The principle of Amun is completion. He completes everything, which is also why his name was said at the end of prayers. Amun is the invisible breath of creation. He completes the process of creation and renews the process in other realms. Altogether, the 4 worlds of creation are constituted by 10 families of Neteru. Neteru is the Kemetic word for gods. And all 10 of these families represent the principles of creative manifestation, and they embody the functions of the phenomenal world. All 10 of these families altogether constitute 42 gods. So it's 42 stages of creation, which is 42 deities in total. And understanding these gods is understanding the 42 stages of creation, which is understanding the entirety of the cycle of life from beginning to end and back again, because it's a cyclical process. These are the 42 fundamental stages that provide the foundation of all creation. They provide the foundation of all existence. It's echoed in nature. The observance of nature is the observance of these 42 stages occurring continuously. The story of the cosmos is told through the story of Asa, Oset, Set, Neptet, and Heru. That's the story of the sun, the moon, the stars. It's the story of the characteristics of human nature. They're the original story of the death and resurrection of Christ, the Immaculate Conception of Mother Mary. All of the stories that we know in religious context come from that story. They're the stories that some of the biggest Hollywood films drew inspiration from, movies such as The Lion King, the story of the African gods. So I'm going to get into that in the next video because it's also something that I've referred to a few times. So if that's something that you'd like to check out, if you'd like to know the original story of our African gods, you can check that out in the next video. So that's it from me for part 1. I'll see you in the next video. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and take care of yourself.